that mindset mastery is a learnable skill. With the right understanding and consistent practice, anyone can transform their thought patterns and, by extension, their experience of life. The latest research in neuroplasticity confirms that our brains remain malleable throughout our lives, capable of forming new neural pathways that support more empowering ways of thinking. In this comprehensive guide, we'll explore the cutting-edge strategies for mindset mastery that are proving most effective in 2025. We'll examine the science behind thought power, identify the common obstacles to mental clarity, and provide practical techniques for reprogramming your mind to support your highest aspirations. Whether you're seeking to enhance your performance, improve your relationships, increase your happiness, or simply gain more peace of mind, the principles and practices shared here will give you the tools to consciously direct your thoughts rather than being directed by them. The power to shape your experience begins with the recognition that you are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them, capable of observing, evaluating, and redirecting them. This fundamental distinction is the gateway to true mindset mastery and the foundation upon which all other mental skills are built. Chapter 1. The Science of Thought Power. The relationship between our thoughts and our reality is no longer just philosophical speculation. It's supported by rigorous scientific research. Understanding this science provides both motivation and direction for mindset mastery efforts. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections, lies at the heart of thought power. Until relatively recently, scientists believed that brain development occurred primarily during childhood and adolescence, with minimal changes possible in adulthood. We now know this view was dramatically incorrect. Research using advanced brain imaging techniques has demonstrated that our brains continue to form new neural pathways and alter existing ones throughout our entire lives, in response to learning, experience, and even our own directed thoughts. This means that no matter your age or history, you can literally rewire your brain through intentional thinking. When you repeatedly think certain thoughts, you strengthen specific neural pathways, making those thought patterns more automatic and accessible. This explains why habitual negative thinking becomes self-reinforcing. You're actually building brain architecture that supports pessimism, anxiety, or limitation. The good news is that this same mechanism works in reverse. Consistent, positive, empowering thoughts create neural networks that make constructive thinking increasingly natural. The prefrontal cortex, the brain region associated with executive functions like planning, decision-making, and moderating social behavior, plays a crucial role in mindset mastery. This area is particularly responsive to mindfulness practices, which strengthen its ability to override automatic negative thought patterns generated by the amygdala, our brain's threat detection center. Beyond neuroplasticity, the science of epigenetics reveals that our thoughts and perceptions can actually influence gene expression. While we can't change our genetic code, research shows that our mental and emotional states can turn genes on or off, affecting everything from immune function to aging processes. Studies of meditation practitioners, for example, show measurable changes in gene expression related to inflammation, stress response, and cellular aging. The mind-body connection extends further through the study of psychoneuroimmunology, which examines how our thoughts and emotions affect our nervous and immune systems. Research consistently demonstrates that negative thought patterns increase stress hormones like cortisol, which suppresses immune function and contributes to numerous health problems. Conversely, positive mental states trigger the release of neurotransmitters and hormones that support healing and overall well-being. Quantum physics adds another fascinating dimension to our understanding of thought power. At the subatomic level, particles exist in states of probability until they're observed, suggesting that consciousness itself plays a role in determining physical reality. While the full implications of quantum mechanics for everyday life remain debated, the fundamental insight that observer and observed are interconnected aligns with both ancient wisdom and emerging scientific models of consciousness. The field of psychoneuroendocrinology examines how thoughts influence our hormonal systems. Research shows that even brief periods of positive or negative thinking can trigger cascades of biochemical changes throughout the body. For example, visualizing a stressful situation triggers cortisol release, similar to actually experiencing that stress, While imagining positive outcomes increases dopamine and serotonin, neurotransmitters associated with pleasure and well-being. Social neuroscience reveals that our thoughts don't just affect our individual biology, they influence our interactions with others. Through mirror neurons, our brains are constantly responding to the mental and emotional states of those around us. This explains why negative thinking can be contagious in families or workplaces, and why cultivating positive thought patterns can elevate entire communities. The science of neurogenesis. The formation of new neurons provides further evidence for thought power. Research shows that certain mental activities, including learning new skills, solving novel problems, and engaging in creative thinking, stimulate the birth of new brain cells even in adulthood. This means that challenging your mind with positive, growth-oriented thinking literally expands your brain's capacity. Understanding these scientific mechanisms transforms mindset mastery from a vague self-help concept to a precise form of mental training. Just as an athlete trains specific muscles for improved performance, you can train specific neural networks for enhanced thinking. The key is consistency and proper technique. Sporadic positive thinking has limited impact, while regular focused mental practices create lasting neural change. Chapter 2. The Mindset Traps of 2025. As we navigate 2025, several distinct mindset challenges have emerged that make thought mastery both more difficult and more essential. Recognizing these modern mental traps is the first step toward overcoming them. The attention economy represents perhaps the greatest threat to mindset mastery today. Tech companies employ thousands of engineers specifically tasked with capturing and monetizing your attention. The average person now encounters more persuasive technology in a single day than our ancestors experienced in a lifetime. These systems are designed to hijack your thought processes, creating addictive loops that keep you engaged with platforms rather than present with your own intentional thinking. This constant digital stimulation has led to what neuroscientists call continuous partial attention, a state where we're perpetually dividing our mental resources among multiple inputs. The result is a mind that's chronically scattered, making sustained focused thought increasingly rare. Many people now struggle to read a book for more than a few minutes without checking their devices, a clear indicator of diminished attention capacity. The information overload of our era creates another significant mindset trap. The human brain evolved to process limited amounts of information relevant to immediate survival and social functioning. Today, we're bombarded with the equivalent of 174 newspapers worth of data daily, far beyond our cognitive capacity to meaningfully process. This overload triggers what psychologists call cognitive overwhelm, a state where the prefrontal cortex essentially shuts down, defaulting to simplistic, black-and-white thinking rather than nuanced analysis. Social comparison has been supercharged by digital platforms, creating unprecedented challenges for mental well-being. While humans have always compared themselves to others, today's comparison isn't limited to our immediate community. It's global and curated to show idealized versions of reality. The result is what researchers call comparison fatigue, a chronic sense of inadequacy that undermines positive thinking regardless of actual life circumstances. The acceleration of change across all domains of life has created what futurists term adaptive stress, the mental strain of constantly adjusting to new technologies, social norms, economic conditions, and information landscapes. This perpetual adaptation depletes cognitive resources that might otherwise be directed toward intentional thought mastery. Many people report feeling mentally exhausted simply from keeping up with the pace of change, leaving little energy for deliberate mindset cultivation. Uncertainty has reached unprecedented levels, challenging our fundamental need for predictability and control. From climate change to geopolitical instability to economic transformation, the future seems increasingly unpredictable. This uncertainty triggers what neuroscientists call an amygdala hijack, where the brain's threat detection system overrides higher cognitive functions, making it difficult to maintain optimistic, solution-focused thinking. The collapse of traditional meaning structures, religious institutions, stable career paths, clear social roles has created what philosophers call an existential vacuum. Without inherited frameworks for making sense of life, many people struggle with questions of purpose and significance. This meaning deficit makes it difficult to maintain positive thought patterns, as the mind naturally seeks coherence and narrative structure to organize experience. Tribal polarization has intensified, creating powerful social pressures toward ideological conformity rather than independent thinking. Research shows that when group identity is threatened, the brain's capacity for nuanced thought diminishes dramatically. Many people now find themselves caught in thought bubbles, reinforced by both algorithms and social dynamics, making it difficult to maintain mental sovereignty. The rise of artificial intelligence has introduced new forms of cognitive offloading, where we increasingly delegate thinking to digital systems. While this offers obvious conveniences, it also atrophies certain cognitive muscles. Studies show that people who rely heavily on GPS navigation, for example, experience actual shrinkage in brain regions associated with spatial reasoning. Similar effects are being observed across multiple domains of cognition as AI handles more of a mental workload. The paradox of choice has intensified as options in every area of life continue to multiply. While choice seems empowering, research consistently shows that beyond a certain threshold, more options create decision fatigue and diminished satisfaction. Many people now experience what psychologists call choice paralysis, where the mental burden of evaluating endless possibilities leads to avoidance, procrastination, or defaulting to whatever option requires least resistance. These mindset traps of 2025 create a perfect storm of challenges for thought mastery. Yet understanding them also reveals specific countermeasures that can be deployed. By recognizing these forces, we can develop targeted strategies to protect and strengthen our mental sovereignty in an age designed to compromise it. Chapter 3. The Foundation of Mindset Mastery, Mental Awareness. Before you can change your thoughts, you must become aware of them. This fundamental skill, the ability to observe your own thinking without being completely identified with it, is the cornerstone of all mindset mastery. Without this awareness, you remain at the mercy of automatic thought patterns, regardless of how much you know about positive thinking and theory. Mental awareness begins with the recognition that you are not your thoughts. This distinction between the thinker and the thoughts is what meditation traditions have emphasized for thousands of years, and what modern psychology now confirms is essential for cognitive flexibility. Your thoughts are mental events occurring within your consciousness, not definitive statements about reality or your identity. Developing this observer perspective requires regular practice. One effective approach is the daily thought audit, a structured process of examining your mental patterns without judgment. Set aside 10 and 15 minutes each day to simply notice what you're thinking. Don't try to change anything initially, just observe with curiosity. What themes emerge? What tone characterizes your internal dialogue? What assumptions underlie your automatic thoughts? As you develop this awareness, you'll likely notice several common thought distortions that undermine effective mindset. Catastrophizing involves imagining the worst possible outcomes. Black and white thinking reduces complex situations to simplistic either-or categories. Personalization assumes events are directly related to you when they often aren't. Mind reading presumes you know what others are thinking without evidence. Fortune-telling predicts negative outcomes without considering alternatives. These cognitive distortions operate largely outside awareness for most people, coloring perception and driving emotional reactions automatically. By learning to recognize these patterns in real time, you create a crucial gap between stimulus and response, what psychologists call the point of choice, where new thinking becomes possible. Mental awareness also involves recognizing thought triggers, the specific situations, interactions, or environmental cues that activate particular thinking patterns. These triggers often operate through association, bypassing conscious processing. For example, a certain tone of voice might trigger defensive thoughts, or entering a specific environment might activate self-doubt, all without your conscious recognition of the connection. By mapping your personal thought triggers, you gain valuable insight into the mechanics of your mental patterns. This mapping process involves noting when negative or limiting thoughts arise and tracking backward to identify what preceded them. Over time, clear patterns emerge, allowing you to anticipate and prepare for situations that typically derail your thinking. The practice of thought labeling enhances mental awareness by creating distance between you and your thoughts. When you notice a thought arise, simply label it: planning thought, worrying thought, judging thought, remembering thought. This simple act of labeling interrupts automatic identification with the thought content and strengthens your observer perspective. Emotional awareness is inseparable from thought awareness, as emotions and thoughts continuously influence each other. Many thought patterns persist precisely because they are emotionally charged, making them resistant to purely logical examination. By developing the ability to recognize and name your emotions as they arise, you gain insight into why certain thoughts have such power over you. The body-mind connection provides another avenue for developing mental awareness. Physical sensations often precede or accompany specific thought patterns. Tension in the shoulders might signal anxious thinking, while a constricted throat might accompany self-censoring thoughts. By tuning into these bodily cues, you can catch problematic thinking earlier in the process, before it gains momentum. Environmental awareness extends your understanding of thought patterns by recognizing how different settings influence your mental state. Digital environments, physical spaces, social contexts, and even weather conditions can significantly impact thought tendencies. By noticing these correlations, you can make more conscious choices about the environments you expose yourself to and how you prepare mentally for different contexts. The practice of thought tracking, systematically recording your thoughts throughout the day, accelerates the development of mental awareness. While continuous tracking is impractical, periodic check-ins using a simple app or notebook can reveal patterns that remain invisible otherwise. Many people are shocked to discover how repetitive their thoughts actually are when they begin tracking them objectively. As your mental awareness develops, you'll notice that thoughts have different qualities and characteristics. Some are fleeting, while others are persistent. Some have a visual component, while others are primarily verbal. Some feel sticky and demanding of attention, while others pass through awareness easily. This nuanced recognition of thought qualities is what meditation traditions call bare attention, the ability to notice the actual nature of mental events rather than just their content. The ultimate goal of mental awareness isn't to eliminate negative thoughts, but to recognize all thoughts as mental events rather than absolute truths. This metacognitive perspective, thinking about your thinking, creates the foundation for all other mindset mastery techniques. Without it, even the most sophisticated positive thinking strategies remain superficial, unable to transform the deeper patterns that drive your experience. Chapter 4. Thought Selection. Choosing your mental focus. Once you've developed basic mental awareness, the next step in mindset mastery is learning to deliberately select your thoughts rather than passively accepting whatever arises in your mind. This skill-conscious thought selection is what distinguishes those who master their mindset from those who remain at the mercy of mental habits and external influences. The principle of selective attention forms the foundation of thought selection. Your brain processes only a tiny fraction of the information available at any moment, filtering input based on what you've trained it to prioritize. By deliberately directing this attentional filter, you literally change what you perceive and therefore what you think about. The reticular activating system, RAS, a network of neurons in the brainstem, plays a crucial role in this filtering process. The RAS acts as a gatekeeper, determining which information reaches your conscious awareness based on what you've programmed it to consider important. When you decide to focus on opportunities rather than obstacles, for example, you're essentially reprogramming your RAS to highlight different aspects of your experience. Practical thought selection begins with setting clear mental priorities. Just as you might plan your day around key activities, you can plan your mental focus around key themes or perspectives. Each morning, identify 3-5 thought areas you want to prioritize, perhaps gratitude, solution finding, or appreciation of beauty. This simple practice primes your attentional system to select thoughts aligned with these priorities throughout the day. The technique of thought substitution builds on this foundation by actively replacing unhelpful thoughts with more constructive alternatives. When you notice a negative or limiting thought arise, consciously introduce a different thought that serves you better. This isn't about denying reality or forcing positivity. It's about choosing which aspects of reality you emphasize and how you interpret them. For example, if you notice the thought, "I'm not prepared for this presentation," you might substitute, "I've done my research and I'll focus on delivering value rather than being perfect." This alternative acknowledges challenges while maintaining a constructive orientation. With practice, this substitution process becomes increasingly automatic. Question framing represents another powerful tool for thought selection. The questions you ask yourself literally direct your mental focus and determine the range of thoughts available to you. Why does this always happen to me? Creates a very different thought trajectory than, what can I learn from this situation? By consciously choosing empowering questions, you guide your thinking toward constructive pathways. Developing a personal lexicon of empowering phrases provides ready alternatives when negative thoughts arise. These aren't generic affirmations, but personally meaningful statements that resonate with your specific values and goals. When crafted thoughtfully, these phrases serve as mental anchors that can quickly redirect your thinking during challenging moments. The practice of mental compartmentalization helps prevent thought spillover, where concerns in one area of life contaminate your thinking in unrelated areas. By creating clear mental boundaries around different life domains, work, relationships, health, finances, you can maintain appropriate focus in each context without unnecessary mental interference. Thought scheduling offers another approach to selection by designating specific times for different types of thinking. Rather than worrying throughout the day, for instance, you might allocate a 15-minute worry period where you fully engage with concerns. Outside that period, when worries arise, you simply note them for later consideration and return to your chosen focus. This technique acknowledges all thought types while maintaining control over their timing. The skill of thought amplification involves intentionally expanding helpful thoughts while allowing limiting ones to pass without elaboration. When a constructive thought arises, you can strengthen it by asking questions that extend its implications, visualizing related scenarios, or connecting it to your core values. This deliberate amplification builds neural pathways that support your desired mindset. Environmental curation supports thought selection by structuring your physical and digital surroundings to prompt desired thinking. Visual cues, carefully chosen media consumption, and selective social exposure all influence which thoughts are most accessible to your mind. By thoughtfully designing these environmental factors, you create external scaffolding for your internal thought selection efforts. The practice of mental rehearsal prepares you for situations that typically trigger unhelpful thinking. By visualizing challenging scenarios in advance and mentally practicing your desired thought responses, you create neural pathways that make constructive thinking more accessible when you actually encounter those situations. This preparation significantly increases your ability to select helpful thoughts under pressure. Thought selection becomes increasingly automatic with consistent practice, eventually creating what psychologists call positive automaticity, constructive thinking that occurs without conscious effort. This automaticity represents the integration of mindset mastery into your neural architecture, where selecting empowering thoughts becomes your default rather than requiring constant vigilance. Chapter 5. Emotional Intelligence and Thought Management. Emotions and thoughts are inextricably linked, each influencing and reinforcing the other. Any approach to mindset mastery that ignores the emotional dimension will ultimately fall short. Developing emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize, understand, and skillfully work with emotions, is therefore essential for sustainable thought management. The neurological basis for this connection lies in the brain's limbic system, which processes emotions, and the prefrontal cortex, which handles higher-order thinking. These systems are physically interconnected, with neural pathways running in both directions. When emotions are intense, the limbic system can effectively hijack the prefrontal cortex, making rational thought difficult. Conversely, certain thought patterns can trigger powerful emotional responses through these same pathways. Emotional awareness forms the foundation of this aspect of mindset mastery. Many people have limited emotional vocabulary, recognizing only basic states like good, bad, stressed, or fine. Expanding your ability to identify and name specific emotions, distinguishing between anxiety and anticipation, disappointment and despair, contentment and joy, creates the precision needed for effective emotional intelligence. The practice of emotional acceptance addresses a common mindset trap: the tendency to resist or judge certain emotions, creating secondary suffering beyond the initial feeling. When you label emotions as bad or inappropriate, you create internal conflict that amplifies their impact on your thinking. By accepting all emotions as valid information, rather than problems to be solved. You reduce their disruptive influence on your thought patterns. Emotional regulation builds on this acceptance by developing specific techniques to work with emotional intensity. The RAIN method offers one structured approach. Recognize the emotion. Allow it to be present without resistance. Investigate its physical sensations and underlying beliefs, and non-identify with it, recognizing that you are experiencing the emotion but are not defined by it. This process prevents emotions from overwhelming your thinking capacity. Understanding emotional triggers helps you anticipate and prepare for situations that typically generate strong feelings. These triggers are often rooted in past experiences, particularly those from childhood or other vulnerable periods. By mapping your personal emotional landscape, you can develop targeted strategies for maintaining thought clarity even when triggered. The technique of emotional reframing involves consciously shifting your perspective on a situation to generate different emotional responses. For example, viewing a challenge as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat can transform anxiety into excitement. Emotions that feel similar physically but have dramatically different effects on your thinking. This reframing isn't about denying reality, but about choosing the most constructive interpretative lens. Somatic intelligence awareness of how emotions manifest in your body provides another avenue for managing the emotion-thought connection. Physical practices like deep breathing, progressive muscle relaxation, and mindful movement dramatically can directly shift your emotional state. This reframing isn't about denying reality, but about
These
choosing
approaches
the most
leverage the
constructive
body-mind
interpretative
connection
lens
to influence thought
Somatic
patterns from the
intelligence
bottom up,
awareness of
rather
how
than the
emotions
top
manifest
down.
in your body.
The practice
Provides
of emotional
another avenue for
differentiation
managing the
involves
emotion
distinguishing
thought
between
connection.
primary emotions,
Physical practices
direct
like deep
responses to
breathing,
situations,
progressive muscle
and secondary
relaxation,
emotions,
and mindful
reactions
movements to your
can
own
directly
emotions.
shift your emotional
For example, feeling
creating
ashamed about
space
being
for
angry
clearer
or thinking. These approaches leverage the body-mind connection to influence thought patterns from the bottom up rather than the top down. The practice of emotional differentiation involves distinguishing between primary emotions, direct responses to situations, and secondary emotions, reactions to your own emotions. For example, feeling ashamed about being angry or anxious about being sad. These secondary emotions often drive problematic thinking more than the primary emotions themselves. By recognizing this layering, you can address the core emotion more effectively. Developing emotional resilience. The ability to recover quickly from difficult feelings significantly enhances thought management. Resilience isn't about avoiding emotions, but about moving through them efficiently without becoming stuck. Practices like self-compassion, perspective-taking, and meaning-making build this resilience, allowing you to maintain constructive thinking even during challenging emotional periods. The technique of emotional scheduling parallels thought scheduling by allocating specific times to fully experience and process feelings rather than allowing them to intrude randomly throughout your day. This structured approach honors the importance of emotions while maintaining boundaries that protect your mental clarity for essential activities. Understanding the connection between physical state and emotions provides additional tools for thought management. Factors like sleep quality, nutrition, exercise, and exposure to natural light significantly impact emotional regulation capacity. By attending to these physiological foundations, you create conditions where emotional intelligence can flourish, supporting clearer thinking. The practice of emotional journaling offers a structured way to process feelings outside of high-stakes situations. By regularly writing about your emotional experiences, you develop greater clarity about patterns and triggers while creating healthy distance from intense feelings. This written processing prevents emotional backlog that might otherwise compromise your thinking. Developing compassionate self-talk addresses the harsh internal dialogue that often accompanies difficult emotions. When you're struggling emotionally, the quality of your self-communication can either amplify or soothe the distress. By cultivating a kind, understanding inner voice, you create an emotional environment conducive to constructive thinking rather than rumination or catastrophizing. The integration of emotional intelligence with thought management creates what psychologists call cognitive emotional coherence, a state where your thinking and feeling are aligned rather than in conflict. This coherence represents a higher level of mindset mastery, where emotions inform and enrich your thinking rather than disrupting it, allowing for responses that are both rational and emotionally intelligent. Chapter 6. Identity-Based Mindset Transformation. While techniques for managing individual thoughts and emotions are valuable, the most profound mindset shifts occur at the level of identity, your fundamental sense of who you are. When your self-concept changes, your thoughts naturally align with this new identity without requiring constant conscious effort. The neuroscience of identity reveals why this approach is so powerful. Your brain maintains a network of self-related neural connections that filter and interpret experience based on your self-concept. When you think, "I am a procrastinator," or "I am resilient," you're not just describing yourself, you're activating specific neural networks that then influence perception, memory, and behavior in ways that reinforce that identity. Identity-based transformation begins with identity awareness. Recognizing the self-definitions that currently shape your thinking. These definitions often operate implicitly, outside conscious awareness. By bringing them into focus through reflection questions like, how do I define myself and what kind of person do I believe I am? You can identify limiting self-concepts that need revision. The technique of identity questioning involves examining the evidence for your current self-definitions. Many limiting identities are based on selective memory, overgeneralization, or outdated information. By systematically challenging these beliefs with questions like, is this really true about me? And what evidence contradicts this self-definition? You can loosen the grip of restrictive identities. Developing identity flexibility. The understanding that your self-concept is constructed rather than fixed creates space for intentional identity shifts. Research in psychology and neuroscience confirms that identity is far more malleable than previously believed. By recognizing that you are continuously creating your sense of self through attention, interpretation, and narrative, you gain the freedom to participate consciously in this creation process. The practice of identity crafting involves deliberately designing self-definitions that support your aspirations. Rather than waiting for achievements to change how you see yourself, you proactively adopt identities that facilitate those achievements. For example, instead of thinking, "I'll see myself as a writer when I publish a book," you might adopt the identity, "I am a writer now," which naturally leads to writing behaviors that eventually produce the book. Narrative revision addresses the stories you tell about yourself, which form the foundation of identity. By examining your personal narratives, the turning points, challenges, and themes you emphasize when making sense of your life, you can identify stories that limit your potential. Rewriting these narratives from different perspectives opens new possibilities for who you might become. The technique of identity expansion involves broadening your self-concept to include multiple facets, rather than defining yourself narrowly. When you see yourself as complex and multidimensional, setbacks in one area have less impact on your overall sense of self. This expanded identity creates psychological resilience and allows for more flexible thinking across different life domains. Developing identity-based habits leverages the power of consistent behavior to reshape self-concept. When you regularly act in ways aligned with your desired identity, these behaviors gradually become self-reinforcing. The key insight is that identity drives behavior, but behavior also shapes identity, creating a positive feedback loop when harnessed intentionally. The practice of identity visualization involves mentally rehearsing not just specific actions, but the experience of being your desired self. By vividly imagining how you would think, feel, and respond to situations as this evolved version of yourself, you create neural templates that make these patterns more accessible in real situations. Understanding identity congruence addresses the disconnection that often occurs between conscious identity aspirations and subconscious self-concepts. When these are misaligned, internal conflict undermines mindset mastery efforts. Techniques like parts work, inner dialogue, and congruence exercises help integrate different aspects of self-concept for more consistent thinking. The technique of identity anchoring involves creating specific triggers that quickly activate your desired self-concept in challenging situations. These anchors might be physical gestures, visualization cues, or brief phrases that remind you of who you're choosing to be. When practiced consistently, these anchors can interrupt limiting identity patterns before they gain momentum. Developing identity mentors provides external support for internal identity shifts. By identifying people who embody qualities you're developing, you create reference points that make abstract aspirations more concrete. These mentors might be personal acquaintances, public figures, historical individuals, or even composite characters who represent your ideal self-expression. The practice of identity testing involves deliberately seeking experiences that challenge limiting self-concepts while reinforcing expansive ones. By strategically placing yourself in situations that require your desired qualities, you gather evidence that contradicts old identities and supports new ones. This evidence-based approach accelerates identity transformation by grounding it in lived experience rather than just conceptual understanding. Identity-based mindset transformation represents the deepest level of thought mastery because it changes the source from which thoughts arise. When your fundamental sense of self shifts, new thinking patterns emerge naturally as expressions of this evolved identity, creating sustainable change that doesn't require constant vigilance or effort. Chapter 7. Environmental Design for Optimal Thinking. Your physical and digital environments exert powerful influences on your thought patterns, often operating below conscious awareness. By deliberately designing these environments to support your desired mindset, you create external structures that make optimal thinking more natural and accessible. The cognitive science of environmental influence reveals that your surroundings continuously prime your brain, activating specific neural networks and making certain thoughts more likely. This priming occurs through all sensory channels, visual cues, sounds, physical sensations, and even subtle factors like air quality and lighting all shape your mental state and thought tendencies. Physical space design begins with eliminating thought disruptors, elements in your environment that fragment attention or trigger unhelpful thinking. Common disruptors include visual clutter, notification-generating devices, noise pollution, and poor ergonomics that create physical discomfort. By systematically removing these elements from your primary spaces, you reduce the cognitive load that compromises thought quality. The technique of context-specific design recognizes that different types of thinking require different environmental supports. A space designed for creative ideation might feature natural elements, varied visual stimuli, and comfortable seating that allows position changes. In contrast, an environment for focused analytical thinking might be more minimalist, with fewer distractions and more structured elements. Developing thought zones within your living or working space creates environmental cues that trigger specific mental states. By designating particular areas for different thinking modes, perhaps a reflection corner, a creativity station, or a problem-solving desk, you leverage the power of environmental association to shift your mindset as you move between zones. The practice of digital environment curation addresses the significant impact of technology on thought patterns. This includes organizing information systems for minimal cognitive friction, designing notification strategies that protect attention, creating boundaries between different digital activities, and selecting virtual aesthetics that support desired mental states. Understanding attention architecture. The deliberate design of spaces to direct focus in specific ways allows you to structure environments that naturally guide your thinking toward priority areas. This might involve positioning key visual reminders at eye level, creating physical pathways that support productive routines, or arranging tools and resources to make important activities more accessible than distractions. The technique of sensory design leverages the profound connection between sensory input and mental state. Specific sounds, scents, textures, and visual elements can trigger particular thought patterns through neurological association. By thoughtfully incorporating these sensory elements into your environment, you create subtle but powerful thought management tools. Developing transition rituals addresses the challenge of shifting between different thinking modes. These structured practices, perhaps a 2-minute breathing exercise when moving from creative to analytical work, or a brief walking meditation between meetings, help your brain disengage from previous thought patterns and prepare for new ones. The physical environment can support these transitions through designated spaces or visual cues. The practice of social environment design recognizes that the people around you significantly influence your thought patterns. This involves making conscious choices about who you spend time with, how you structure interactions, help your brain disengage and what boundaries you establish in relationships, and prepare for new ones. By curating your social environment can support these transitions for your internal designated spaces or visual cues. Understanding chronobiology. The practice of social environment design recognizes that the people around you significantly influence your thought patterns. This involves making conscious choices about who you spend time with, how you structure interactions, and what boundaries you establish in relationships. By curating your social environment, you create external support for your internal mindset goals. Understanding chronobiology. The science of how your thinking varies throughout the day based on natural biological rhythms allows you to align activities with your optimal mental states. By scheduling different types of thinking during your personal peak periods for those cognitive modes, you leverage your natural cycles rather than fighting against them. The technique of environmental simplification addresses the cognitive burden of excessive choice and complexity. Research consistently shows that mental clarity improves in simplified environments where decision fatigue is minimized. By reducing options, streamlining systems, and creating clear defaults for routine activities, you free cognitive resources for higher quality thinking on priority matters. Developing environmental triggers involves placing specific cues in your surroundings that activate desired thought patterns. These might be visual reminders of key principles, objects that symbolize personal values, or strategically positioned questions that prompt particular thinking modes. When designed thoughtfully, these triggers operate automatically, requiring no conscious effort to influence your mindset. The practice of technology alignment ensures that your digital tools support rather than undermine your thought management goals. This involves selecting applications based on their cognitive impact rather than just their features, configuring tools to minimize distraction, establishing clear technology boundaries, and regularly auditing your digital ecosystem for mindset effects. Environmental design for optimal thinking represents a form of distributed cognition where your surroundings become an extension of your thought management system. By externalizing aspects of mindset regulation into your environment, you reduce the internal resources required for thought mastery, creating sustainable support for your cognitive goals. Chapter 8. The Social Dimension of Mindset Mastery. While mindset is often discussed as an individual phenomenon, your thought patterns are profoundly influenced by social connections. Understanding and strategically leveraging this social dimension can significantly accelerate your mindset mastery journey. The neuroscience of social influence reveals that your brain is literally wired to synchronize with others through mirror neurons and other neural mechanisms. When you spend time with someone, your brain activity begins to align with theirs in measurable ways, affecting everything from emotional states to thought patterns. This neural synchronization explains why mindsets are contagious, both positively and negatively. Mindset mapping involves becoming aware of how different relationships affect your thinking. Some connections consistently elevate your thought patterns, while others tend to trigger limitation or negativity. By consciously tracking these effects, you can make more informed choices about who you spend time with and how you manage different relationships. The technique of social environment curation builds on this awareness by strategically increasing exposure to people whose mindsets align with your aspirations while limiting interaction with those who reinforce limiting thought patterns. This isn't about avoiding all challenging relationships, but about being intentional with your social energy based on mindset impacts. Developing a personal growth network creates structured support for mindset evolution. This might include mentors who model advanced thinking in areas you're developing, peers who share your commitment to mindset mastery, and accountability partners who help you maintain awareness of your thought patterns. These relationships provide external scaffolding for internal change. The practice of mindset communication involves explicitly sharing your thought management goals with key people in your life. When others understand what you're working to shift in your thinking, they can provide appropriate support rather than unknowingly reinforcing old patterns. This transparency also creates natural accountability for your mindset practices. Understanding thought contagion. The tendency for thinking patterns to spread through social networks allows you to be more discerning about the mental influences you expose yourself to. Just as you might avoid physical illness by limiting exposure to certain environments, you can protect your mental clarity by being selective about whose thought patterns you regularly encounter. The technique of social boundary setting addresses relationships that consistently undermine your mindset goals. This involves developing clear limits around certain interactions, preparing mentally for challenging social situations, and having prepared responses for people who trigger unhelpful thinking. These boundaries aren't about controlling others, but about managing your own mental environment. Developing communication, filtering the ability to extract value from interactions without absorbing negative thought patterns, allows you to maintain relationships while protecting your mindset. This skill involves distinguishing between content and delivery, separating useful information from unhelpful framing, and translating others' communications into terms that support your thought goals. The practice of mindset leadership recognizes that your thinking affects others just as theirs affects you. By consciously modeling the thought patterns you want to see in your relationships and communities, you create positive contagion that benefits both yourself and those around you. This leadership doesn't require formal authority. It operates through natural social influence. For gazers, understanding collective intelligence. The enhanced cognitive capacity that emerges from effective collaboration allows you to leverage group thinking for mindset expansion. When properly structured, collaborative thinking can overcome individual limitations and generate insights that wouldn't be accessible through solo reflection. Learning to participate in and facilitate such collective intelligence becomes a powerful mindset development tool. The technique of relationship reframing involves consciously shifting how you interpret challenging interactions to support more constructive thinking. Rather than seeing difficult people as obstacles, you might view them as teachers, highlighting areas for your growth. This reframing doesn't deny relationship challenges, but transforms how they impact your thought patterns. Developing feedback literacy, the ability to receive and integrate external perspectives on your thinking, accelerates mindset development by providing visibility into blind spots. By cultivating relationships where honest feedback is exchanged and creating systems for regular thought pattern review, you gain insights that would be inaccessible through self-reflection alone. The practice of social experimentation involves temporarily placing yourself in different social environments to experience their effects on your thinking. By deliberately varying your social context, perhaps attending different types of events, joining new communities, or even briefly immersing in unfamiliar cultures, you gain perspective on how malleable your thought patterns actually are and discover new possibilities for how you might think. The social dimension of mindset mastery recognizes that no one develops their thinking in isolation. By consciously engaging with the interpersonal aspects of thought patterns, you transform relationships from unconscious influences to strategic resources for mindset development, creating a social ecosystem that naturally supports your cognitive evolution. Chapter 9. Advanced Mindset Practices for 2025. As our understanding of the mind continues to evolve, new approaches to mindset mastery have emerged that integrate cutting-edge research with time-tested wisdom. These advanced practices move beyond basic positive thinking to address the deeper structures of consciousness that shape your thought patterns. Metacognitive meditation represents a significant evolution beyond traditional mindfulness practices. While basic mindfulness involves observing thoughts, metacognitive meditation focuses on understanding the structures that generate those thoughts. This approach involves systematically exploring questions like, where do my thoughts come from? And what patterns govern my thinking process? Through specialized contemplative techniques. The practice of cognitive flexibility training addresses the mind's tendency toward rigid thinking patterns. Through structured exercises that challenge you to rapidly shift perspectives, consider multiple interpretations simultaneously, and hold contradictory viewpoints without immediate resolution, you develop neural pathways that support more adaptable thinking in all situations. Understanding consciousness, hacking the deliberate use of specific stimuli to induce desired mental states opens new possibilities for mindset regulation. This might include binaural beats that entrain brain waves to particular frequencies, light therapy that regulates circadian rhythms affecting cognition, or breathing patterns that activate specific neural networks associated with clarity or creativity. The technique of mental model expansion involves deliberately acquiring new frameworks for interpreting experience. By studying diverse disciplines from systems thinking to evolutionary psychology to quantum physics, you gain conceptual tools that allow for more sophisticated analysis of situations. These mental models function as cognitive software, upgrading your thinking capacity across all domains. Developing flow state proficiency, the ability to enter optimal psychological states characterized by complete absorption and effortless performance, creates periods of exceptionally high-quality thinking. By understanding your personal flow triggers and designing activities that match challenge level to skill level, you can access these enhanced mental states more consistently. The practice of cognitive bias integration addresses the mind's inherent thinking errors, not by eliminating them, which is largely impossible, but by incorporating awareness of them into your decision processes. By systematically checking for specific biases before making important judgments, you reduce their distorting effects while accepting the brain's natural limitations. Understanding neuroplasticity. Optimization, the science of maximizing the brain's ability to form new neural connections, allows you to accelerate mindset changes through specific protocols. These might include combining mental practice with physical movement, using spaced repetition for new thought patterns, or leveraging sleep cycles for memory consolidation of new mental habits. The technique of reality tunneling involves consciously exploring how different belief systems create entirely different perceptual worlds. By temporarily adopting alternative worldviews, perhaps through role-playing exercises, immersive reading, or structured dialogue with people holding different perspectives, you develop the ability to step outside your default reality tunnel and select more empowering interpretive frameworks. Developing cognitive endurance. The mental equivalent of physical stamina allows you to maintain high-quality thinking for extended periods. Through progressive training that gradually increases the duration of focused mental activity while monitoring for quality degradation, you build the capacity for sustained thought management, even during challenging circumstances. The practice of uncertainty training directly addresses the mind's discomfort with ambiguity, which often drives premature conclusions in black-and-white thinking. By deliberately engaging with complex problems that have no clear solutions, exposing yourself to diverse perspectives on contentious issues, and practicing the art of holding questions open rather than rushing to answers, you develop greater comfort with the uncertain nature of reality. Understanding cognitive integration. The harmonization of different thinking modes that typically operate in isolation allows for more holistic thought patterns. By developing practices that bridge analytical and intuitive thinking, verbal and visual processing, or abstract and embodied cognition, you access the full spectrum of your mental capacities rather than being limited to dominant modes. The technique of belief system auditing involves systematically examining the foundational assumptions that shape your thinking. By identifying core beliefs, tracing their origins, evaluating their current utility, and consciously updating those that no longer serve you, you address thought patterns at their source rather than just managing their symptoms. Developing perspective agility. The ability to rapidly shift between different temporal, spatial, and conceptual viewpoints creates exceptional mental flexibility. Practices might include considering situations from far future perspectives, adopting the viewpoints of different stakeholders, or analyzing issues at varying levels of abstraction. This agility prevents getting stuck in limited frames of reference that constrain thinking. The practice of cognitive deconditioning addresses the automated thought patterns installed through cultural programming, education, and life experience. By temporarily suspending these conditioned responses through specialized techniques, perhaps using pattern interruption, cognitive diffusion, or perspective shifting exercises, you create space for fresh thinking unconstrained by habitual mental grooves. These advanced mindset practices represent the frontier of thought mastery in 2025, integrating insights from neuroscience, psychology, contemplative traditions, and systems thinking. While more demanding than basic approaches, they offer correspondingly deeper results, transforming not just individual thoughts, but the fundamental structures that generate your thinking. Chapter 10. Mindset, Mastery in Specific Life Domains. While the principles of thought management apply universally, their application varies significantly across different life areas. Each domain presents unique mindset challenges and opportunities that require specialized approaches for optimal results. Professional mindset mastery. The workplace demands particular thought patterns that many struggle to maintain consistently. The challenge of balancing ambition with presence, competition with collaboration, and self-promotion with humility creates complex mindset requirements that change as you advance in your career. Decision fatigue represents one of the most significant professional mindset challenges. The average knowledge worker makes hundreds of decisions daily, gradually depleting mental resources. By implementing decision minimization strategies, creating standard operating procedures for routine choices, establishing clear decision criteria for common situations, and batching similar decisions, you preserve cognitive capacity for truly important matters. The imposter phenomenon affects even highly accomplished professionals, creating thought patterns of self-doubt that undermine performance and satisfaction. Addressing this mindset challenge involves collecting and reviewing evidence of competence, reframing mistakes as learning opportunities rather than character indictments, and recognizing that feeling uncertain doesn't equate to being unqualified. Developing strategic patience counters the professional pressure toward constant urgency. By distinguishing between genuinely time-sensitive matters and those that benefit from longer consideration, you avoid the reactive thinking that leads to poor decisions. This mindset skill involves recognizing when additional time will yield disproportionate quality improvements and having the confidence to take that time despite external pressure. The technique of professional identity expansion addresses the limiting self-concepts that often constrain career development. By consciously broadening how you define your professional self, perhaps seeing yourself as a thought leader rather than just a manager, or as a creative problem solver rather than just a technical specialist, you open new possibilities for contribution and advancement that rigid professional identities preclude. Understanding attention management as your primary professional asset shifts focus from time management to thought quality. In knowledge work, an hour of clear, focused thinking produces more value than several hours of scattered attention. By designing your workday around your cognitive rhythms, protecting periods for deep work, and creating transition rituals between different thinking modes, you maximize this crucial resource, financial mindset mastery. Money triggers some of our most deeply ingrained thought patterns, often operating from subconscious programming established in childhood. These patterns influence not just spending and saving behaviors, but career choices, business decisions, and even relationship dynamics. Abundance thinking represents a fundamental shift from scarcity-based financial mindsets. This isn't magical thinking about money appearing without effort, but rather a focus on opportunities, resources, and possibilities rather than limitations. Research shows that scarcity thinking literally narrows cognitive bandwidth, while abundance thinking expands creative problem-solving capacity around financial challenges. The technique of money story revision addresses the narratives that shape your financial thought patterns. By examining the stories you tell about money, its meaning, how it's properly acquired, who deserves it, you can identify limiting narratives inherited from family, culture, or past experiences. Consciously creating new money stories aligned with your values and aspirations transforms the thought patterns that drive financial behavior. Developing value-based financial thinking shifts focus from abstract numbers to the actual life value that money provides. This approach involves regularly reflecting on questions like, what experiences and capabilities do I most value that money can facilitate? And how much is enough for my genuine well-being? This clarity prevents the mindset traps of either neglecting financial health or pursuing wealth without purpose. The practice of financial thought boundaries addresses the tendency for money concerns to invade all areas of life, creating chronic stress that compromises thinking in unrelated domains. By establishing specific times for financial planning and problem solving while maintaining mental separation during other activities, you prevent financial anxiety from becoming a constant cognitive burden. Understanding delayed gratification as a trainable mental skill rather than an inherent personality trait, opens new possibilities for financial mindset development. Through progressive practices that build your capacity to resist immediate rewards for greater future benefits, you strengthen the neural pathways that support long-term financial thinking without feeling deprived in the present. Relationship mindset mastery. Our connections with others both shape and reflect our thought patterns in profound ways. The mindsets we bring to relationships determine not just their quality, but the very possibilities we can perceive within them. Abundance thinking in relationships counters the zero-sum mentality that creates unnecessary competition and insecurity. By recognizing that attention, appreciation, and even love are expandable rather than limited resources, you avoid the thought traps that lead to jealousy, possessiveness, and constant comparison. This abundance perspective allows for more generous, secure relationship thinking. The technique of projection awareness addresses our tendency to attribute our own thoughts and feelings to others. By developing the habit of distinguishing between what you know about another's thinking and what you're assuming based on your own patterns, you create space for genuine understanding rather than reacting to relationship projections. Developing curiosity as a primary relationship mindset transforms how you respond to differences and conflicts. When disagreement triggers defensive or judgmental thinking, consciously shifting to curiosity, genuinely wondering about the other's experience and perspective, creates both better outcomes and more enjoyable interactions. This isn't just a communication technique, but a fundamental thought orientation. The practice of expectation consciousness addresses the hidden assumptions that create relationship disappointment and resentment. By bringing awareness to your unspoken expectations of how others should behave, what they should prioritize, how they should express care, you gain choice about which expectations to communicate, which to modify, and which to release, preventing the thought spirals that damage connections. Understanding relationship systems